The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jenifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Welcome back to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jenifer.
And I'm Brian.
Here's a question. Are you a customer or a client? Is there a difference? Well, we're going to go over that and answer that question for you. We're going to get real about real estate, but before we do, just want to talk about what's been keeping us busy.
It's been a fairly slow 2 weeks over the holidays, but that's generally the case in real estate. And frankly, I like that 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to put you to work. We went up to North Conway over New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Thank you to Tony and Karen for the use of their condo. Had some great music, some great food, met up with some friends, and let's see, we played pool, shuffleboard,
darts,
ping pong. Yeah, we were very competitive. We went skiing. Went skiing. So that was a nice little break. And while we were there, I negotiated 2 offers, and I've got 2 different buyers who are working with builders for pricing custom homes. So when we do go away, I always feel the need to justify that I was still working.
Jenifer's always available 24/7.
Oh, no, let's make that like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, that works.
All right, sounds good. So every industry has jargon. And in real estate, it turns out there's some common words that have a specific legal distinction. So we're going to talk today about agency and agency relationships. What's an agent? Are you a customer or client? Who does the agent represent? I'm very careful using the words customer, client. A lot of times I'll just say consumer so I don't have to pick one or the other because there are legal distinctions between are you a customer or are you a client? And we've got to be mindful about what we say. New Hampshire and Massachusetts both have a written brokerage relationship disclosure for the first meeting. That's how important this is, those 2 little words.
Sometimes it can be quite awkward actually presenting these forms to a client, a customer for the first time.
A customer for the first time. I know. Hello, nice to meet you. Here is a document with the state seal on it, and you need to sign it. It's very off-putting, actually.
And they actually don't have to sign it.
It's true. But we have to give it to them. We have to ask them to sign it, and we have to explain it. So elsewhere, check the rules for your area if you're outside of New Hampshire or Mass, or you can allow us to refer you to a professional in your area. So an agent represents other people and their interests. So if you think of like a sports agent or you think of a Hollywood agent, that's similar to what we do. We are a licensed profession, and that's for consumer protection. Salesperson,
which I am,
and broker are 2 different licenses. A salesperson has to work for and be supervised by a broker. All salespeople and brokers are licensees, that's a category, and only members of the National Association of Realtors who subscribe to its strict code of ethics can be realtors.
It's not realtor?
We put the extra syllable in because we go the extra mile. No, it's not realtor, it's realtor. But obviously a lot of people say it the other way too. The term agency in real estate actually refers to legal responsibilities that your real estate professional owes to you and to other parties in the transaction. So the seller's representative, also known as the listing agent or the seller's agent, they are hired by and represent the seller. So all fiduciary duties are owed to the seller. Do you know what a fiduciary is?
What's a fiduciary again?
You do know what it is, but thank you for the setup. So a fiduciary is a person who holds a legal or ethical relationship of trust. The key word is trust with one or more parties. So that means that person's job for the seller is to get the best price and terms for the client. The client relationship is created by the signed listing contract. Brian, when you were little, did you ever think you'd be a fiduciary when you grew up?
No.
Hey, Mom, I want to be a fiduciary.
No. Like a lot of kids growing up in the area, I probably wanted to play professional hockey when I was a kid. You know, my idols were Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, etc.
So I could have been a sports wife?
Maybe you still can.
Yeah, I know. Where's the over 60 league, right?
Wait, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. So other examples of fiduciaries are financial planners and attorneys, people who handle your money, and they must put your interests ahead of their own. A buyer's representative, this is similar, also known as a buyer's agent, works in the buyer's best interest. And that client relationship is created by a signed exclusive buyer agency agreement. Now, the buyer can pay the agent directly through a negotiated fee. The seller can pay it on the buyer's behalf, or what's most typical situation in the U.S. right now, there is a commission split between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent.
What's a commission? When do I get paid?
You don't get paid. I take all the money.
Oh, yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a mystery to you, but I let you buy toys occasionally.
That's fine with me.
All right, good. So it's easy to tell when a seller's represented. There's a sign in the lawn. The property information gets put on MLS, the multiple listing service. And online, when you go to look at a property, the listing agent's information always must be included somewhere, usually in the fine print. So your big portals like Zillow and Trulia, they will display very aggressively, call now with a number and an agent and a picture of an agent. I'm a premier agent on Zillow, so I'm one of them.
But it's not necessarily the listing agent.
Not necessarily the listing agent, exactly. Those websites make money by selling advertising space to us agents so that we get the calls. So it's not unusual for me to get a call from Zillow, somebody thinking that I know all about this property and that it's my listing, when in fact, no, it's not. You got to look in the fine print to find out who the listing agent is. To get back on track, though.
Sure.
Buyers who are represented on agents, they don't have any sign. I don't know whether they have an agent or not. So if they start contacting me directly about one of my listings, they need to identify that they have a buyer's agent, or better yet, they should really put all communications through their own representative.
I mean, that's what you're paying us for.
Exactly. We can't interfere with a buyer's relationship with their agent, but I don't know that boundary exists unless it's discussed. Maybe I could start a new business and I could sell hats or something for buyers to wear so they could identify that they have an agent.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. I know realtors love their badges, but I don't think that we should make our buyers wear those. So. All
right. You're probably correct about that. So pretty simple. Agent can represent the buyer or the seller, right? Only two choices, correct?
Correct. No.
No, not correct.
You would think so, but it's a bit confusing.
It is a bit confusing. So those are pretty easily understood, and then I've got a few other versions here. So you become a client when you hire an agent. Prior to that, if you don't hire the agent, you just talk to them on the phone, you go see a few houses, you are a customer, and the agent at that point is a facilitator, sometimes known as a transaction broker. These non-agency relationships, nobody's been hired, they vary considerably from state to state. In New Hampshire, a customer is owed disclosure, honesty, fairness, and care, while a client also gets confidentiality, loyalty, representation, advice, and obedience.
We always have to disclose facts about the property. Any property issues, it is what it is. We need to disclose that, whether you're a customer or a client.
Exactly. Disclose. There's no such thing about confidentiality about the property. There's only confidentiality about the people. I can't give a customer negotiation advice like I can with a client. That's a pretty bright line between a customer and a client. And that means I have to keep my opinions to myself.
Very tough for Jenifer.
Very tough for me. I mean, why would you have a realtor if you couldn't get the benefit of their experience.
Exactly.
Exactly. So being a customer and then becoming a client, it's like dating and marriage. You don't have to commit right away. And sometimes we have people who hire us just as we're sitting down to write the offer. I prefer to do it sooner so that while we're looking at homes, we can be talking about resale, we can be talking about value, we can be talking about pros and cons, and giving them advice all the way through. Sellers usually sign the listing agreement when they're ready to go on the market, and that's when they make the transition from customer to client.
What about CMAs, comparative market analysis?
That's really interesting, and there's even a little bit of a controversy among real estate agents on that, because we will do a CMA, a comparative market analysis, for a seller the first time or second time that we meet them before we sign a listing agreement, which means we're talking to them about value. And the difference is that we can give data to a customer, but we don't cross over into analysis and advice until we have been hired. There are some real estate agents who believe that they can't do a CMA for a buyer unless the buyer has become a client. My argument is if you could do it for a seller before they're a client, you could do it for a buyer. But you have to do that same thing. It's just data. We're not telling you what to offer. We're just showing you information.
Exactly. I have to be careful providing values off the cuff, which I've been known to do, but try to avoid.
Yeah.
As a customer, we're providing data, and if you're a client, then we're offering advice.
We're offering advice.
Looking out for your best interest.
Yeah, and we're talking negotiation strategy and that sort of thing. Exactly. Believe it or not, there's still two more types of agency relationships. A sub-agent owes the same fiduciary duties to the agent's customer as the agent does. Sub-agency usually arises when a cooperating sales associate from another brokerage who's not the buyer's agent shows property to a buyer. The sub-agent works with the buyer to show the property, but they owe their fiduciary duties to the listing broker and the seller.
Now I'm confused.
And you should be. This actually, when I first started in the business in the 80s, was how all real estate was practiced. And it is confusing because everybody thought and behaved as if the agent who was working with the buyer was working for the buyer, but legally and in reality, they were working for the listing agent who was working for the seller. So the advent of buyer representation being its own separate thing has changed our industry drastically, and I very rarely see sub-agency used anymore, even though it is still legal on the books. So we can ignore it. You're probably not going to run into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is disclosed dual agency, which is tricky. After over 30 years in the business, I just said how long ago I started, I find disclosed dual agency scary. But before we get into that, let's take a quick look at How's the Market, brought to you by Real Value Appraisal.
Please consider me your local real estate economist. Jenifer has asked me to provide some quick tidbits on current market conditions here in New Hampshire. Let's talk inventory. The overall inventory of homes on the market in New Hampshire continues to dwindle. According to the year-end MLS stats, the statewide inventory is down 29% from December 2018. There's currently only about a 3-month inventory of available homes statewide, extremely low. Usually a six-month supply is considered a balanced market. It remains a seller's market and is very tight, especially for homes in the 300 to 400,000 range. For example, go ahead.
Which is actually kind of the average median price.
Sure.
That's a sweet spot.
Most homes are going to fall in that sweet spot. Exactly.
Right, yeah.
For example, according to MLS, as of today, for homes in the 300 to 400,000 range, there are only 503 active and available statewide.
Statewide?
Yes, the entire state.
Wow.
There are only 74 homes available in all of Rockingham County. It's just crazy. In that price range. In Londonderry, in the town in which we live and also have our office, there were only 2 available homes in that current price range.
Yeah. And this is why with the buyers we're working with, a lot of times we're like, a house comes on the market, let's be first on the doorstep and be really aggressive. So
I mean, if you're thinking of selling a home in this price range, it's a great time as you're going to have very little competition.
Yeah, please call us if you've got a home to sell.
Definitely.
We can make it happen. So, what does this mean? I mean, when people ask me about how the market is, I just have two words. I say cash out, especially if you're downsizing. Timing the market is tough. It's not something that I really recommend. But if you're thinking about downsizing, I'm going to give you a pitch as to why this is a great time. So,
is there a bad time to buy real estate?
There really isn't.
No,
because it's not strictly a financial investment. It's also the roof over your head.
Exactly.
You're doing double duty there. But you were just saying, I think that prices were up 11%, was it?
Yes.
Okay, a different
Approximately,
episode.
yes.
Approximately. So let's hypothetically say that your house is worth $400,000 today. You'd like to buy a house that's worth $300,000. First of all, we got to be first ones on the doorstep, right?
Sure.
Okay. But second of all, let's just say that's the case. You've got a $100,000 differential. And when you sell your house, that's equity that you can put in the bank, or in our case, we could spend it.
On tuition.
Tuition, exactly. Well, what if the market shifts? It just went up 10%. What if it goes down 10%? Both houses are going to be affected equally. The smaller house is now $270,000, and your house is now $360,000. You lost $40,000 in value, but the one that you were going to buy only dropped $30,000. So now that same move out of pocket costs you $10,000 more. So that's why, even though percentage-wise everybody is affected equally, if you're moving down, this is a great prime market to do it in, because that can put some more cash in your pocket.
And where are we going to find that 300 to 400,000 home?
We are going to work our butts off.
There you go.
I will knock on doors if need to. So anyway, getting back to agency. Was I exaggerating when I said that I thought disclosed dual agency was scary?
No, I don't think so. Although it only occurs on a limited basis, it's good to know in case the situation does arise.
Absolutely. It's very important to understand it. A disclosed dual agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. So you can see the potential for a conflict of interest right there. And the agent has to actually limit their services. They cannot favor the buyer or the seller, and they become neutral in negotiations. So one of the things you hired an agent for was to help you in negotiations, and you just lost that. We typically try to avoid dual agency.
Yeah, it's definitely better for both parties if they have their own agent representing their best interests.
Right. Disclosed dual agency is legal and an accepted practice in New Hampshire and Mass. So it's not like a divorce where each side has to have their own attorney. It can be done. It requires 2 steps of written consent from all parties. You have to agree to it before you even see the property, and then you have to agree to it again, all parties, before the offer is written.
So if there's only one agent, does that automatically mean they are dual agent?
No, actually it doesn't. So a typical scenario of an agent who double ends a transaction is when a buyer calls the listing agent to see the house, and about 5% of transactions have one agent. Last time I checked the stats locally. So that means the vast majority of the time there are 2 agents, one on the sell side, one on the buy side. However, if a buyer goes directly to the listing agent, that agent should disclose right then and there that they are representing the seller. That's that form we talked about.
Sure.
And the buyer is representing themselves. So there's not a dual agency there, because the agent only has one client, and that client is their seller. The buyer can make an offer, they can close. The agent still only represents one party. That agent can earn both sides of the commission, and they don't have to become a dual agent. Dual agency most often occurs when the buyer has already signed a contract with the agent, and the agent is actively looking for property for them, and then the agent happens to list a property that would be good for their needs, that would be a good match for their needs.
What if a Keller Williams agent brings their buyer client to a Keller Williams listing? Is that dual agency?
Yeah, and this is true of any sort of real estate company. If you've got an agent through that office, and they're bringing you to a listing through that office, chances are, at least in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, that agency is doing something called designated agency, and that's what we do at KW Metropolitan. So designated agency means we've got our supervising broker, and then you've got the salespeople who work under the broker, and a salesperson in the same office. One can represent the seller, one can represent the buyer. There's no conflict of interest. Both agents give their clients full representation and full fiduciary.
What about open houses?
So at open houses, I don't have to meet you at the door with that disclosure form, but I do have to post a disclosure that says, hey, we are representatives of the sellers. And the main purpose of that is so that you don't give confidential information. Anything that a consumer says to the seller's agent is the same as saying it to the seller. So if you walked in and you said, I would offer $10,000 over list price if that meant I could get this house, but don't tell the seller that.
Right.
I can't keep that secret. That confidentiality doesn't run between me and a random buyer.
Sure.
It only runs between me and my client.
Okay, I saw a house with a listing agent and I want representation. What do I do?
This happens from time to time. You can always have representation. So even if you went directly to the listing agent and they told you you represent yourself, you can still hire an agent. Where it's going to get fuzzy is on the compensation. So the way that we as buyer's agents earn our fee and share in the fee and cooperate with the listing agent is by introducing the buyer to the property. So if I didn't introduce the buyer to the property, the buyer may need to pay me directly.
Right.
Or I may need to have a conversation with that listing agent and negotiate some type of a fee other than what would have been normally offered.
Again, a little awkward.
A little bit awkward, yeah. A quick tip on open houses too. When you go to an open house and you have an agent, go ahead and sign in and just write your agent's name down. I have to tell you, when I'm going through and following up with people after an open house and I see you have an agent, I'm happy to send the follow-up information to your agent and not have to bother you and chase you down.
Another situation. I have a buyer's agent. Can I talk to the listing agent or contact them through Zillow?
Yeah, so we covered this a little bit, and particularly with the portals, it's like, hey, do you want more information? Click here.
Okay.
I go through your agent. It's what we're being paid for.
Yeah.
We might as well earn our fee, right?
Exactly. Please bother your agent.
Please bother
Jennifer
your
is
agent.
always available.
Yeah. We've got some great clients, and we have handled transactions for, I think, just about every member of their family. They're wonderful. They're loyal. And we've got good communication with them. And then I happened to find out one of the houses that we were showing, the agent said, oh, yeah, she already gave me a call and asked me questions about that because she didn't want to bother her agent. Bother me.
Exactly.
Do it.
Another agent is assisting me while I'm on vacation. Another member of my agent's team is hosting the open house. What?
Yeah, so here's where we get into that designated agency thing. So our office currently has over like 400 agents among a couple of different locations.
Exactly.
But anyway, the designated agent is the agent that's named in your listing agreement or your exclusive buyer agency agreement. There are other agents in the company who might be helping out at open houses, or they'll cover a showing or do something while you're on vacation. They can help you with what's called ministerial acts, which is just another word for saying administrative. But when it comes to that negotiation, exactly. When it comes to that negotiation and that representing your interests and giving you advice, that is for your agent to handle, not for the agent that's covering for them. And the same goes for transaction coordinators. A lot of us use transaction coordinators who handle the paperwork and the details and the deadlines from contract to close. Some of those are licensed. Some of them are not, but they should just be doing administrative tasks and not performing that role of representing you. So there we go. That's how many angels can fit on the head of a pin. Until next time, we're getting real about real estate, and I'd ask you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. And as always, we'll give a big shout out to Eric Lindbergh. That's his original music you hear in our intro, and his link is on our website.
Jenifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The Realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jenifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.